One is to find new carriers. So we have tons and tons of carriers who are interacting with us every single day. And brokers are able to actually use our platform to search lanes that are frequently run, search by equipment type, and find those carriers and start interacting with them, add them to their carrier network. So that's one. And that's really powered again by just the massive, massive network of carriers we have. We have over 350,000 MCs who are actively using our platform. So we're able to provide a ton of great options to both carriers and brokers alike.
Welcome to the ThinkFreight podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and it's my pleasure to have Kary Jablonski, the CEO of Trucker Tools. Kary, thanks for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So I want to dive right in. I don't want to waste too much time. I've seen, Trucker Tools. I've actually used Trucker Tools when I was at a startup brokerage called Full Sail Logistics. Shout out to them. So I was we started there in like 2020, right as COVID hit. And we started using Trucker Tools to help us find more capacity and consistent capacity through some of our lanes. So, I have a little bit of a use case with you guys. So, excited to have you on and talk a little bit about Trucker Tools, your background, and what you guys are really focused on. So, why don't you tell the audience who you are and how you kind of got into the freight industry? You're kind of newer to the industry, right? You've only been in here for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I've been in the
Yeah.
industry now for about coming up on 3 years. So I am a
Okay.
relative newcomer.
No, that's awesome. So where did you start? How did you originally get into the freight industry and get to Trucker Tools?
Yeah, so my background is I'm from the East Coast originally. And uh, after college, I knew I wanted to go into business generally. I had a great
Yeah.
experience working with student run business in college. And a lot of folks who were a couple of years older than I, who I respected, had gone into management consulting, which is just kind of blanket recommending things to businesses. I actually did it for the federal government. I did that with Deloitte for a couple of years, knew
Oh,
very
nice.
quickly that it was not going to be my jam. I wanted to kind of get into it and own a little bit more than being on the advisory side. So I quickly was looking for
Mm.
roles in tech and found a great opportunity at Uber, which was actually headquartered from an operations perspective in the city I was living in, Washington, D.C. So
Yeah.
I was able to make the move over into tech and worked at Uber for a couple of years, first on the operations side with ride sharing in the US, helping manage marketplaces and drive growth. And then I lived abroad for a while, primarily in Mexico City. I was helping to launch Uber Eats across the region and worked on the strategy and
Wow.
planning team. So did that for a while. Knew I wanted to come back to the US. So post Uber IPO, I was looking to move into something a little bit smaller, a little scrappier, and met the now owners of Trucker Tools, a company called Alpine Software Group. Our founders of the business of Trucker Tools, Prasad and Murali, were selling the business in 2021, and they were looking. And ASG was looking for an operator to come in and usher it into the next phase of growth. And given my experiences at Uber and what I brought to the table, we realized there was a lot of great mutual fit and interest. So I joined the business initially as our
Mm.
COO for about 6 months and then stepped into the CEO role in early 2022.
That's awesome. So coming up on 2 years as CEO, how has that transition into the freight world over the last couple of years been?
It's been great. Yeah. It was definitely a little intimidating at first. There's a lot of credibility gained in freight by a number of years of experience and kind of
Oh yeah.
it's dog years more than anything. So I definitely came in knowing that I needed to earn respect. I wasn't, just expecting that. And the way to do that was really by listening to a lot of our customers and prospects, and certainly our folks at the company, um, to just understand what their day to day was like, what problems they were chewing on, what was difficult for them, and figuring out very quickly how I could add value and build that
Yeah.
trust early on to show, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here to help us grow. I'm here to help you as a business grow. So I think some kind of early wins, just very tactical things that I helped to put on the board early on was pretty fundamental in helping me build great relationships. And from there, it's really just been a matter of kind of continuing to nurture those. I spent a lot of time out on the road. I spent a lot of time with customers and making sure that we're not just releasing product and just assuming it goes well, but really being intentional about the
Yeah.
feedback we're getting that we're incorporating back into the product, and making sure I talk a lot internally about a say to do ratio. When we say we're going to do something, we actually do it.
No, I absolutely love that, and I think that to your point, you do spend a lot of time on the road. I followed you for a while, and like you're always at a conference or always attending a show, like to go meet people and just like connect with your customers and with outsiders. And I think that that's really like a missed opportunity. I think in this industry where a lot of other like we're starting to really hit that mark where we have Manifest and F3 and a lot of big events every year that are coming back. And I think that that's a really good opportunity for people to really get out there and meet and have those interpersonal relationships, especially after COVID, because people want to get out and they want to have those relationships and meet people more on that personal level again.
And I think as someone who's new to the industry too, going to shows really sped up my learning curve because I was able to
Mm,
visualize, well, what is this industry? Who are the players? Like literally would walk by the tech
absolutely.
stack in real life at conferences. So it really helped me understand kind of what's going on. I certainly when I started in Freight, I was like, is that, am I everything kind of sounds like it's actually doing the same thing. I can't really tell different things apart. And I think that's something that, um, it's just kind of the nature of the marketing beast. But going to shows and actually getting
Yeah.
to drill in and talk to someone like, hey, can you walk me through your solution and help me understand what it does has been really beneficial in helping me understand and have a mental model for the industry.
I want to touch on something you said just a second ago, but I want to touch on that in a little bit because I want to touch on more of like the Trucker Tools story and kind of how you
Yeah.
guys, really came about. Because you guys launched, I think I read, I think like 2009. So like really early on in kind of like the freight tech space. So how do you think launching so early like propelled you guys into a more like digital space that gave you guys that advantage going forward? Because drivers, they tend to be skeptical of new tech and new apps
Yep.
and tracking style apps. So how do you think that really gave you the advantage over some of the competitors in the space?
All credit there is due to our founders, Prasad Galopoli and Murali Ilapeti. They had the vision. So their backstory is back in 2008 or so, Prasad was working for Get Loaded, which was a load board that
Mm,
eventually sold to DAT, I think in 2008 or 2009. So he really understood kind of the plight of the owner operator, and he was really committed to building technology to help make their lives easier. Again, this is back in 2009. Smartphone adoption is on the rise. You're probably still printing
yeah.
out physical directions. Truckers have maps in their vehicles to figure out where to go. It's difficult to understand what different amenities different truck stops have, how to find fuel. So Prasad really saw an opportunity that as the smartphone emerged and became widely adopted, building a digital assistant for owner operators primarily was really something that could add a ton of value to their lives. So brought on Murali, who was our CTO and kind of the brains behind the product and the technology, and they built really the industry's first mobile app for owner ops. And being first to market there definitely
Yeah.
has, we're still benefiting from that almost 15 years later because we built that brand equity and trust with carriers, especially small carriers, way back in the day. They understood the brand, they understood who we were, they understood that we were there trying to just help them run more efficient businesses. So we were able to aggregate a ton of capacity, and by that I mean kind of we had a ton of owner ops and small fleets using us on the mobile app, and that's really what's powered now our broker facing products that they use to connect with brokers and provide updates to help them not have to be on the phone as much.
That's a really awesome and interesting like intro story because because in 2009 there weren't a lot of companies that were building technology like this, especially for truck drivers and to help them like live those better lives. So to for him to see that vision and like know from his experience with Get Loaded, like he could break into this market, especially with this new technology of smartphones
Yeah,
and Apple releasing their iPhone. I mean, I think that opportunity was really smart and really like a way to use new technology to really your advantage, right? And that's a really great way to go about it.
definitely.
How do you think you came in probably right after this kind of started, but how do you think that the 2018 like ELD mandate has impacted the mobile tracking side for trucker tools, and has that sparked any new products or services that you guys have to implement ELDs?
Great question. So back in, let's call it the early 2010s, mid 2010s, mobile
Yeah.
tracking was, and really app tracking was kind of the standard in the industry. If a brokerage wanted to
Absolutely.
digitize their tracking, you did it through a mobile app like ours. And what the ELD mandate did by kind of driving this mass adoption was spur a bunch of other categories that beyond, just monitoring hours of service, that technology companies, brokers, carriers realized that the ELD could be really valuable for. And one of those, of course, is
Mhm.
tracking. So we started seeing demand from the broker and carrier side to be able to track via ELD, and probably, yeah, kind of 18, 19. And what's really interesting about that is uh, resistance to the ELD and kind of tracking via ELD, I think has certainly dropped a
Right.
lot since then. And that's probably because a couple of things. One, I think our brand equity and carriers understanding that, we use data responsibly and we really respect privacy is huge. But also, just as the kind of profile of carriers out there changes and we have more younger folks coming into the industry and driving, or working on the carrier side, there's just this acknowledgement that data sharing can actually be really effective for both parties. Mobile tracking is great, but something you have to actually start every time, and you have to make sure that you're in range with a cell phone and you have service and your phone's charged. And ELD tracking offers a lot of benefits that mobile tracking doesn't. So, that it's a kind of a set and forget it. It starts tracking when the load's picked up. It stops tracking once it's delivered. You don't have to worry about it every single time you're hauling a load. So there's a lot of benefit to it, and I'm really excited about the tailwinds around tech adoption that are making it more and more appreciated in the industry. And it's been a huge focus of ours at Trucker Tools over the last couple of years. We
Yeah.
built out an entire ELD onboarding program, and we're able to get carriers as large as several hundred trucks live, and integrated with their ELD into our visibility network in a matter of minutes, with some of our
Wow.
strongest integrations. So it's huge for us.
Yeah, that's a massive win, and like you said, it's a lot better of a tracking system because, like you said, it is tied into their ELD. Now, obviously, there is times like last week where we did see the AT&T was having some issues with their cellular, so there was a lot of issues with some of those ELD providers, Samsara, and some of those other ones who were having some mild issues. But overall, that adoption I think is a lot better overall than having to use those macro point tracking apps or in-house built apps to actually track, because then you have a real time visibility, and you also don't have to worry that you're losing or depend on that cell service from the actual cell phone. And then you can also know exactly where the driver is and not really have to bother them. You can kind of meet them where they are, right? So I think that,
Exactly.
and I want to ask you this. So Trucker Tools, you guys, you call yourselves a digital load tracking and freight matching. So how does the freight matching side work? How does that work for smaller owner operators and for brokers who are listening? How can they utilize Trucker Tools, for finding some additional capacity, and carriers who run some of those lanes, kind of on a consistent basis?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple of different ways you can use our suite of tools. One is to find new carriers. So we have
Mm,
tons and tons of carriers who are interacting with us every single day. And brokers are able to actually use our platform to search lanes that are frequently run, search by equipment type, and find those carriers and start interacting with them, add them to their carrier network. So that's one, and that's really powered again by just the massive, massive network of carriers we have. We have over 350,000 MCs
wow.
who are actively using our platform. So we're able to provide a ton of great options, to both carriers and brokers alike. The next is through a suite of automation tools that we have. Life as a carrier sales rep. Is that what you did at TQL? Were you in carrier? Or I guess
Yeah.
TQL is cradle to grave, so you did it
Cradle
all.
to grave. So I did everything, and then same thing at Full Sail. I was cradle to grave.
Okay, great. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how much time you spent sending out emails every day to your kind of core set of carriers,
Oh yeah.
um, just to say, hey, we have these loads. Anyone interested? So we digitize all of that. We automate it. So we're sending,
Mm,
kind of in a waterfall fashion, just like you would if you were, sending it out to your favorite carriers. Here are the carriers we're going to reach out to first in this lane. If not
yep.
covered, there's all this custom business logic built in on the back end. If not covered in X amount of time, we're going to send it to this larger set of carriers. So we automate all of that. We've got automated negotiations. And that leads to the final part of, our suite, our public and private network load boards. So carriers can digitally
Mm,
interact with loads that are fully synced up with brokers' TMSs. So there's no concept of posting a load on Trevor Tools. It's either covered in the TMS or it's not. And if it's not covered, it's on the board. And from there, you can interact digitally with it based on your permission set. So if you're kind of a core carrier for this broker, you're going to be able to go in, submit an offer, potentially book that freight right now. If you're out of network with a broker, you're able to indicate interest or submit an offer, and begin that digital interaction and digital relationship. We've also got a private label offering or private load board offering, so that as a broker, this is something we've seen a lot of interest in over the last couple of years as brokers have moved from investing in building out their own proprietary technology to actually using, vendors and partners like us, so they can focus fully on what they do best, which is booking freight.
Right.
They can build out their own private experience, fully branded, fully customizable, in line with kind of their brand for their core set of carriers.
No, that's really awesome. And so how does some of those tools benefit both kind of the driver or the carrier group, small carrier group, and actually, let me ask you this first. You said you have 350,000 MC numbers. How many of those are like 10 trucks or less or 5 trucks or less?
The vast majority, over 80%,
Wow.
or might be even 85% of our carriers have fewer than 5 trucks.
Okay, so how do some of those digital load matching tools benefit some of those small carriers? If 85% of is that network, how do some of those tools benefit those small carriers?
We're free. It's pretty straightforward. We know
That's
that
awesome.
as software has become ubiquitous, especially in the carrier space, subscriptions add up. It gets expensive in a time like this.
Yeah.
Fuel is expensive. Margins are at an all-time low for especially smaller fleets or owner ops. We want to be an option for them to book freight for free. So our
Mm.
mobile app is free to use. We've got hundreds of thousands of loads on a monthly basis in there. So those are all free to digitally interact with. In addition to that, we've
Awesome.
got all of our kind of tools for life on the road, which goes back to where we started as a mobile app, a digital assistant for owner operators. So fuel optimizer. So you're going from point A to point B. You want to optimize to find the cheapest fuel on that route. We'll spit that out for you for free. Truck stop reviews, way station locators, all of that is in there and intended to support your life as an owner op out there on the road.
That's awesome. And you'd mentioned, you guys, there is no real like load board feature. Like it kind of compares to a load board, but you guys have it. It's either covered or it's not covered. And I think that that's a pretty interesting way to kind of go about it, because that way, you don't have drivers calling on loads that are 25 minutes, 30 minutes been covered, 40 minutes been covered. And same thing with probably brokers, that they don't have to call on capacity that's already been covered. So it saves a lot of time. So we're not spending our time or spinning our wheels, focusing on capacity that already is moving.
Exactly. And that is something that is fundamental to the way we think about capacity. Our founders really actually built out the digital freight matching module
Mm.
with McLeod, who's the largest TMS player out there. Um, so from day one, we've always been committed to making sure that everything we do is based on kind of the highest principles of real-time integration and real-time visibility.
That's awesome. And on the broker side, how many brokerages do you think you guys work with at the current time?
Uh, we're over
Thousands.
700 at this point.
Over that's a pretty good chunk of brokerages. Are you guys working with a lot of like the like you or Coyote TQLs, those size brokerages,
Yeah,
or are you guys working with a lot of smaller brokerages as well?
all the above. We work with
Awesome.
over 50% of the top 100, but we've also
Wow.
got, a very, very fast growing long tail of smaller upstart brokerages. So we work across the board. But what I think also is a little different about us compared to some other
Yeah.
freight tech freight tech companies is that we focus on the broker as our customer, as opposed to with brokers and shippers, which I think is distinct because a lot of tech
Yeah.
that's built um, for brokers doesn't translate one to one to shippers and vice versa. There's different requirements, there's just ways to think about what they're doing. And we're really deliberate in that we're building for the broker. And that includes then a lot of integrations with shipper platforms to make it really easy to pass
Mm.
on updates to them. But we are purpose built for brokers.
No, I love that. And how do you like how do some of those digital tools when you're load matching for both brokers and carriers, how do those translate into long-term relationships? If you're bidding on say digital freight I think you said you can also negotiate through the app. How does that kind of cultivate into some of those longer term relationships that we kind of like look for as brokers and carriers to kind of maintain that capacity and maintain those relationships?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I think as a carrier, you can think of us as really as a marketing tool on your behalf to get to know different brokers who you're not working with. You can understand what freight they've got
Mm,
out there, what their rates look like, and you can use that to digitally introduce yourself. And in a world that is digitizing, brokers are going to
yeah,
really appreciate that a carrier is willing to interact digitally. It's going to make their lives easier. It shows they're easy to work with, shows they're kind of forward thinking. And same on the broker side. On the flip side, being digitally available for carriers and kind of available 24/7 through our mobile app or through our web portal is really important and be able to do business very, very quickly. So, I mean, we're turning kind of what used to be transactional spot relationships into more long-term business partnerships all the time. We're actually releasing a product in a couple of weeks that I can't say too much about right now, but it's going to be in this vein, and we're getting beta feedback from some existing customers right now, and they're it's remarkable. They're saying, "Hey, we're using this tool, and we've already set up 15 carriers this week who are going to be running
wow.
consistent lanes for us."
Wow, that sounds like it's gonna be a really awesome tool and a really interesting product that you guys are gonna be able to help brokers and carriers be able to hone in on some of those longer term capacity stays and RFP positions and contract fills that they're looking for. So yeah, I think that's really interesting and looking forward to seeing that product come out in full here soon. Um, let me ask you this. So as a tool that is kind of for both brokers and carriers, um, I guess how hard has it been, or easy has it been, I guess, to find maybe a right balance to kind of keep everyone happy? Because it's not always what brokers need is not always what carriers need, and vice versa. So how has that balance been?
It is a balance. I that's how I would describe it. And
Yeah,
um, when you think about our business historically, we started out as just a carrier-facing tool. We started out as a
right.
mobile app, and that was our focus. And then in the late 2010s, we started building products for brokers. So I think we kind of were all carrier, then we really over-indexed on the broker. So what I've been focused on doing over the last year or two is bringing harmony to that. So we've done a lot to kind of
Yeah.
reintroduce, making sure that carriers have a voice in our products. And we're using, we have a carrier advisory board that we're talking to all the time to get feedback. We've really ramped up our carrier marketing efforts to make sure they're aware of how they can use us and where they can find things. So it's been a balance. I do think ultimately, though, a big reason a lot of brokers use us is because they say, oh, that's what the carriers want to use to track, for
Mm,
example. So, in a lot of ways, it makes good business sense to be doing something that works for both parties because it's
yeah.
broker carriers relationship. And if carriers are saying, hey, this is what we want to do, then it's going to be so much easier for brokers to be able to work with them. So it's actually kind of there's a nice kind of natural tailwind there for us.
Yeah, no, and I think you mentioned something really interesting, a carrier advisory board. What does that kind of entail and how does that operate? I think that that's a really interesting concept. And I think that that could be more of something maybe that's more widely adopted for even like brokerages who need to have those carrier advocates who know like what it is to be a driver. Truck Parking Club is big about this too. They only hire, a lot of ex truck drivers to run their operations so that the truck driver knows when they're calling on that other end, they're talking to someone who knows and feels those pains. So how does that kind of work, and how many people are on that board, and how's that been going so far?
I saw Evan post about how Truck Parking Club hires former drivers. I love that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's
We have a couple former
awesome. Yeah.
drivers on our team too. Um, yeah, so our carrier advisory board is pretty straightforward. And this is, I think, how we move internally is we see a problem. We're like, all right, let's spin something up. We're going to solve it. We realized
Love that.
we need a way to get sustainable feedback. So we started reaching out to some carriers who we've known for a while. I started advertising it a little bit on some social, mostly on Twitter, where I interact with a lot of carriers, and said, hey, we're spinning up a carrier advisory board. You're going to get previews into our products. You're going to be able to give us feedback in real time about what's working, what's not. And uh, it's as simple as that. My product manager runs it, who focuses on the carrier side in our mobile app. She gets great feedback. Whenever we're thinking about tweaking a feature, we always make sure that we're running
Yeah.
it through several users to understand what
Mm.
the impact of them is going to be. So it's just a really quick feedback loop for us.
I think that's really awesome. I think that more companies, especially on the freight tech side, and especially brokerages, need to look at implementing something like that to have some of those impacts that are going to impact the driver. They can know right away, hey, this is going to impact them in the XYZ way, and that's why you should look at maybe doing F, J, or Y instead, because it makes a lot of sense. The driver is the biggest stakeholder in what we're doing. Like, I can't, as a freight broker, as a previous freight broker, I couldn't do my job without a truck driver, without those carriers. So we have to make sure that we're helping them and kind of meeting them where they are to help them not feel excluded and feel like they're left out of the transaction.
That's a fantastic point. And I'm assuming you probably know Chris Thomas,
I
Indie
do, yeah.
Trucker. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he and I have talked about this too. And he was at Manifest and might have been one of a handful of carriers there. My other trucker was there as well. There were a couple,
Yeah.
Ramel from Trucking Hustle, but
Yep.
we need more end users actually at these things
I
and
fully
talking
agree.
about
Yeah.
the tech that we're using, because it's not just like it's a nice thing to do. It's like those are the actual people who are using the tech who are going to drive. Do you have great visibility compliance or not? If it's not easy for a driver to use, the tech's going to be useless. Totally,
Exactly.
quite frankly. So I think having more of those end users. I mean, it's like I talk to a lot of brokerage leadership, but I also try to talk to a lot of carrier sales reps themselves, because they're the ones who are actually using this. When we're getting product feedback,
Yep.
we don't just want it from leadership; we want it from the end users of these products.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, because if leadership is saying, "Oh yeah, it's great," but if they're not hearing those concerns, if you're not hearing those concerns of the cradle to grave brokers, the carrier sales ops, the track and trace people, you're not going to have that true understanding as to what they're feeling and what's going on with the platform. Maybe what bugs are going on, or things that are just minute that you may not have known or known about, or just better ways to kind of go about things. So I love that you guys seek that feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
How is Trucker Tools right now kind of helping prevent, I guess, a lot of this fraud that's going on in the market? How hard is it, or easy is it to sign up for Trucker Tools? And what kind of vetting process is there, or is the vetting process fully on kind of the broker to make sure they're working with someone who's real and not not a scammer?
No, we have our own internal validation tools. So we're
That's
actually
awesome.
releasing a validation logic where we're going to force carriers through every couple of months a series of questions akin to what's your mother's maiden name, but based on the
Mm,
freight that they haul and the way they work with us. We're really excited about that. In the
that's
meantime, though,
cool.
we have multi-factor authentication, SSO, and we're also talking to a number of databases, FMCSA and beyond, to make sure that we're getting accurate information when a carrier is attempting to sign up. Then we have different admin privileges that need to be established by certain domains. So we're very, very particular about who we do and don't let on the platform. And beyond that, too, brokers can set their own permissions. So some brokers on our
That's cool.
platform, you can't see their freight unless you're in their carrier network, and that is a tight network. Others, they want to show it to everyone. They want to get it out there. So it's really just depends on the broker's
Mm.
preferences as well.
No, I think that's a great way to go about it, and I'm glad that you guys have some of those tools to make sure that you are letting real and authentic carriers and drivers and people on the platform, because right now I think there's a lot of talk around how load boards need to be more selective with who they're just letting on their load boards. We hear a lot about load board fraud on a pretty day-to-day basis. So I'm glad to hear like how you guys are tackling that issue and kind of making it kind of a non-issue to work with capacity within Trucker Tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to touch back on was everyone kind of sounding the same with kind of their platforms and their technology. With there being so many different capacity tools and freight tech tools, how does Trucker Tools market themselves, and whether that's on social media or at these events, to help stand out from the rest of the crowd and effectively get some of the messaging you want to achieve out there?
Something I've been talking about lately is the concept of there being riches and niches. And
Yeah.
I think it's very true for us. We are so focused on just a couple of products internally, and we're not trying to be kind of a one-stop platform for everything freight related. It's really,
Right.
visibility and capacity sourcing. Visibility, especially over the last 2 years has been the tip of the spear for us, if you will, because capacity's been loose. It's been easier to find, from a brokerage perspective, a lot easier to find high quality carriers, or maybe not high quality respectfully, but this fraud's been an issue, but it hasn't
Right.
been as much of an issue as it probably was when you were at Full Sail a couple of years ago. So
Right.
visibility has been huge for us. And we've also made deliberate decisions, like I said, about we're working with brokers. We're not working, we're not selling to shippers. We're focused on this very specific part of the segment, and we want to kind of super serve that, so we can talk very specifically about it and have this real, true, ideal customer and build everything around that to totally overserve a specific customer. So I think also coming in and not being from the industry beyond a couple of years back
Yeah.
has also helped me push my team. And when it comes to articulating what we do, like if I'm relatively new and I can't understand it, like we can't be talking about
That's a
that because it's
problem.
going to get muddied. And I feel like I understand the product pretty well. So I think it also comes down to how you're kind of pushing it internally from a leadership perspective and making sure that we're really crisp around what we are doing.
I love that. Well, I have two more quick ones for you. I want to be cognizant of time. As we kind of get closer here to March, and going into quarter two, what are you most bullish on for the rest of the year for 2024 for the freight industry? And then I've got one more quick one for you.
Yeah. I'm excited for produce season to be here. I'm actually
Yeah.
doing some, thinking on that right now. What I'm bullish on is some really interesting integrations to continue to automate a lot of time consuming tasks so that I can't
Mm,
predict the market. I don't know what it's going to look
right.
like. I imagine it's going to be better by the end of the year from everything I'm hearing and talking to customers about, but it's again, I can't say with certainty, but what I am bullish on is, our ability to continue to drive integrations that make it a lot easier for your systems to be talking to each other. So you don't have to be doing time consuming things. I know there's a really big mandate coming out from a major shipper soon, around requiring, temperature tracking. We're going to be able to
Yeah.
deliver on that. So doing those things that are just going to help you provide the highest levels of service possible is something I am very bullish on.
I absolutely love that. And you mentioned you're also very bullish on produce season. Why are you so bullish on produce season? What are we looking forward to the most this produce season? I'm looking forward to high volumes of produce.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that too. I think just any sort of change. Internally, I can tell you. So, we see so much data on loads created and tracks created, and February,
Yeah.
especially this last week, has been better than we expected. So, I
Nice.
don't know if that's an early sign. Don't quote me on that, but I think any sort of kind of change coming up is welcome. Getting out of February, which I know is historically more or less the slowest
Listen,
season for freight.
tomorrow's headline in the ThinkFreight newsletters will be the market is changing. Trucker Tools CEO Kary Jablonski has made the announcement based on their data. No, I'm totally kidding. I think that I agree that it's an interesting time in produce. I'm a big proponent of produce. I loved hauling produce. I was a big blueberry, blackberry, strawberry, garlic, and watermelon hauler. Those are my favorite things to haul. It's so much fun. You get into a lot of really high volume or a lot of high value produce, especially with strawberries and blueberries. So it gets to be a lot of fun with trying to get spike insurance and things like that, especially on a last minute basis. So a lot of fun there, and I'm very bullish on that as well. Last thing I've got for you, what conferences can people potentially catch you at, or are you looking, forward to the most in freight this year?
The TIA Capital Ideas Conference in Scottsdale is the next big one on my calendar. I'm not going to Food
Nice.
Shippers. I know a lot of people are going to that next week, but not on my calendar right now. I'm taking a couple weeks off from travel. The TIA conference is going to be great, and then I'll be at the FreightWaves conference as well, in Atlanta in early June. In between there, I've got some TMS user conferences as well sprinkled in.
Heck yeah, that's really awesome. And you guys know that if you're looking forward to seeing Kary at one of these events, she's usually posting about it ahead of time on social media. Kary, I want to thank you again so much for coming on the show and spending some time talking about trucker tools and kind of your experience throughout the market. Where can people find you if they're looking to follow you on social media and learn a little bit more about trucker tools?
Yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter are best. I'm on both constantly. So either
Perfect.
or, Kary Jablonski.
Perfect. I'll make sure to link you guys and leave all the links for those handles in the show notes. If you guys like today's podcast, make sure to give it a like and review. Don't forget, we do drop newsletters Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, thinkfreight.io. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks again, Kary.
Thank you.